Hi, I'm Dave, founder of Halloween Year Round, and today I'm here to talk about the new horror slash coming of age teen drama, I Saw the TV Glow, which, no, despite its title and poster, is not a reboot of Poltergeist.
What if I really was someone else? Very far away on the other side of a television screen.
I'm just joking. It's actually a really, really good movie. So where to begin? I think first and foremost, I have to say, I hesitate to call this movie straight up horror. It is more so like a coming of age drama with kind of fantasy horror-esque vibes to it. So just kind of keep that in mind. Like this isn't like a straight up slasher or supernatural horror. There are otherworldly things at play, but I would call this more of a thriller than anything else. And I know that's like an age-old debate. So we start with we have Owen, played by Justice Smith, who is he's really into this show called The Pink Opaque. It's the 90s, and this show it's sort of like swap it for any cheesy 90s show that we all grew up on. For me, that would have been Power Rangers, and I was really into Beetleborgs. You guys remember Beetleborgs? So he develops a friendship with this girl from school, Maddie, and she, together, they watch it. He goes over to her house. He doesn't tell his mom. His mom's really strict about his bedtime and all this stuff. So they grow up watching this show, and then one day, she kind of like just disappears, and then years later reappears and says that she was off with the show, and he's like, you're crazy, that's insane. And she's like, no, you have to come with me, and you can come with me to the show. So where does the horror, where does the fantasy come in? So a lot of it comes from just the style of it. Like it's shot in such a creative way and such a kind of surrealistic way that, like, when you're watching the bits of the show, it's very reminiscent. Do you guys remember that creepypasta about Candle Cove, like the really creepy kid show? Like the scenes of the Pink Opaque show, at least some of them, they feel like there's something out of a nightmare. And I love that it kind of it walks that line where between like fondness for nostalgia and like that thing we loved in our childhood was definitely more disturbing than we thought it was. And I don't want to really get into spoilers, so I'm going to be very vague about the latter half of the movie. I'll just say that you have one character who very much wants to embrace their childhood show and kind of go fully into committing into it and living by it and not living by society's norms. And then you have the other character who very much wants to live by society's norms as a comfort, as a fallback, because they don't know what else to do. And I think that after a while, that person starts to kind of regret it. And there's this really kind of unsettling scene at the end, where they kind of realize what they've given up. And I think that it's obviously no coincidence. This movie is very much an allegory of being afraid to live as your true self. And I think, given writer-director Jane Schoenbrunn, I hope I'm saying that right, given her own kind of backstory, given her own identity, being trans, it very much, there's an obvious metaphor here for people living in the closet, afraid to be themselves, and then people who are like, no, screw it, I gotta be me, and fully embracing their identity, whether that's an LGBTQ identity, or even, I think you could widen it to even just be embracing your identity as being into a certain fandom, or into anything that society doesn't deem as like the norm. I think that's the beauty about a good movie or a good piece of art, is there's very clearly the director's intention here that it is an LGBTQ metaphor. But I think you could, like I said, you could even widen it, and there's so many other ways you could interpret it. So why do I call this a horror movie at all? It's those surreal, nightmarish scenes. It's not a movie that's coming to try to scare you. It's a movie that kind of wants you to be afraid of your own missteps in life and afraid to not live your true self and live your true life. And I think that the third act really hammers that in. And again, it's led by two really, really good performances. I love Justice Smith as just this, you know, very awkward kid. Mind you, you do have to suspend a lot of disbelief when he's like 30 years old playing a ninth grader. Because they have another actor playing him as like seventh grade him. And then 2 years later, he's Justice Smith. And then he remains like that for the rest of the movie, like well into adulthood. And I almost feel like you should have just had the younger kid play him in ninth grade and then turn him into Justice Smith. But then, well, if you did that, then you would lose all the stuff between him and I'm drawing a blank on the other actor's name. I don't know why. I remember they were the sister in Atypical. Google it. So I really like both of them. You know, you have Owen, who's just he represents everything that, everything that holds us back, that voice in our head telling us, no, be normal, no, be compliant, be obedient, be a good little whatever, and don't stand out, don't, keep to yourself. And Maddie, who's literally just like disappears to go live in the pink opaque, so I really, really like that dynamic, and I like that it's through the lens of childhood nostalgia, that because that's where we look back and we're like, remember when we were young and like the possibilities were endless, and then we get old and suddenly they're not so endless anymore. So just, most of the movies I watch and review, they're varying degrees. I really, really liked how this one, I love the visual style. I love the directing. I love that it's not afraid to go full nightmare fuel in certain scenes. And I think that it's just such a cool, surreal movie. It was so unlike any movie I've seen in the last few months that it was an interesting watch that I feel like I need to watch it again just to kind of like absorb it better. But I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was really cool. It was really interesting, and it really made me think. And while, again, the central metaphor that I think the director's going for isn't something that directly applies to me, I can appreciate it, and I can, like I said, I can even see how, that metaphor could be widened to really apply to anyone who's ever felt like they're an oddball, they don't belong, they're not the norm. I mean, look at me. Do I look like a normal guy? No. So, but these are just my thoughts. Let me know what you thought of I Saw the TV Glow. I would love to hear your opinions in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. If you don't, you may end up getting stuck in a weird, nightmarish 90s TV show. And as always, every day is Halloween.